Hey, what's good? It's your boy, Mixtape Moth, and today I'm going to hit y'all with a review of the new Jim Jones and Harry Fraud album entitled The Fraud Department. Let's get to it. Alright, so this is the brand new collaborative album between Harlem rapper Jim Jones and Brooklyn producer Harry Fraud. When looking at their most recent and respective bodies of work, it seems like these two guys can't miss. With respect to Jim Jones, he basically revitalized his music career back in 2018 with his Wasted Talent album. The following year, he joined forces with the Heatmakers to release the very impressive El Capo album. Then in 2020, he dropped the El Capo Deluxe, which was strong enough to have been a sequel to El Capo rather than just a deluxe. So in my opinion, leading into this project with Harry Fraud, Jim Jones had already been on a strong 3-project run. That is, if you count the El Capo Deluxe as a separate album. Now, Harry Fraud, on the other hand, has proven himself to be one of the most consistent producers in the game, especially if you were looking for beats with a soulful, smooth, psychedelic, and wavy edge. Just last year, Harry Fraud produced very quality projects for Currency, Larry June, Jay Worthy, and Mayhem Loren. I know not enough people talked about these releases last year, but they were very solid. So this album, The Fraud Department, is the first collaborative project between Jim and Fraud, and I think one of the main reasons this and the last couple of Jim Jones projects have been so fire, aside from his improvements as a lyricist, is due to his decision to lock in with one producer for a whole project. Jim has a great chemistry when working with the Heatmakers, and it appears that he will now be able to add Harry Fraud to the list of producers that he gels well with. The Fraud Department contains 11 tracks lasting approximately 31 minutes. As far as the features are concerned, Jim Jones re-enlists some of the artists who have appeared on his last several projects, and these guys include Dave East, Mano, Mark Skibilia, Currency, Trav, and Conway the Machine. He also brings aboard Belly, French Montana, and Big Body Best. But with that being said, let me go ahead and hit y'all with this track-by-track breakdown. The opener, Laps Around the Sun, is a very strong first track. It sets this reflective yet semi-victorious tone right off the bat. Jim talks being thankful to have survived the crack era in Harlem. There's this message of perseverance and overcoming that can be found. One of my favorite lines is "Rockin' 95s, but I'm just jogging my memory." The beat by Harry Fraud reminds me of a 70s blaxploitation score. From the soul sample to the bright woodwinds, there is this vintage quality. It's definitely a smooth and effective way to kick things off. Track 2, Fucked Up, can be looked at as a laid-back anthem. The instrumental is very jazzy with a faint soul sample, piano, and saxophones, but it is the saxophones which really make this pop. There is somewhat of a trap-like refrain from Belly. To be honest, this record sounds like a nice fusion between old school and new school. I really did like the chill luxury rap vibes to this one, and I think Belly does his thing on the hook. The intensity picks up a little bit on Aunt Viola. This one has more of a trap feel, but I would consider it to be a multi-layered trap instrumental. This features a solid verse from Dave East and a decent hook from Trav. I mean, what would a Jim Jones album be without an appearance from Trav? On this record, Jim Jones and Dave East reflect back to their days of moving that work. I feel both paint a picture of that lifestyle pretty well, but it was Jimmy's verse that grabbed my attention the most. That Ray came, we flushed so much coke, we clogged your toilet up. When grandma died, damn, I had turned to alcoholic, but slowly but surely I found my way back. Like that time I lost the key, I had to bounce my way back. So his whole verse really resonated with me, like how he talked about taking losses in the game, but being able to persevere. It kind of reminded me of when Jay-Z talked about losing his 92 bricks, but this was on a much smaller scale, of course. He states, "I know you're probably saying these war stories are repetitious, but never forget that my intellect is vicious. I sat on cigarettes in the ocean just to intercept the fishes." So it was that signature way of Jim Jones putting his words together. Right after is the very smooth and soulful track Lose Lose. I feel Jim is floating on this crisp soul sample production. It has this driving under the city lights when it's snowing kind of vibe. Jim has some imagery that jumps out, like felt like Sugar 96 with the red rag on me, and I used to cook up coke in the same pot the chicken fried. And it's not so much that his bars are crazy on this song, but his flow is polished and his delivery is sharp. Up next is Bada Bang featuring French Montana. Now this is easily the most commercialized and upbeat song from this tape. It's also really the only song that I think some people may have a problem with, or perhaps they would consider it to be the weak link, but I actually like it for the vibes and production. You know, it's far from my favorite, but I don't mind it because I kind of like the wavy and playful quality to the beat. It's a fun record that adds some variety on here for sure. However, French's verse was just okay, and his chorus was kind of cringeworthy. Then on Barry White, Jim does some more reflecting on his past in the streets over a haunting and ghostly backdrop. It is by far the darkest record sonically on this album. He does a good job of bringing you into his old world with lines like, "It was nights we had beef, I had to sleep with the tech. You know it's scary in my hood cause even the Reaper gets fresh." Also, "Feds will snatch you up out your sleep, then charge you for dreaming." I thought that line was pretty compelling. Then he also drops a streetwise jewel towards the end of the record with, "Every time money got low, I had to stop clinging to the urge. Lord knows I could get it back quick, but the reward was never worth the risk." So it makes you think that if you are involved in that life, you have to realize that every dollar isn't a good dollar, and that having that discipline is essential because impatience and greed will definitely get you caught up. I think it's good that Jim is giving us this more mature and kind of cautionary advice rather than to just glorify the material aspects of that lifestyle. Track 7, Say a Prayer, finds Jim Jones rapping in this more thoughtful and pensive state. He's speaking up for those who have been victims to the streets, those who are behind the walls who we won't see for a long time, and also for the revolutionaries who have been targeted by our government. The slowed down horn loop is super dope. This record has that grown man writing music feel. I think Jay Worthy drops a pretty heartfelt hook, and Currency comes through with a solid verse. What follows is the People remix featuring Conway the Machine and Mark Skibilia. This is the remix to Jim Jones's 2020 protest song. It contains the same verse from Jimmy and the same instrumental. The only new addition here is the verse from Conway and the closing chorus from Mark Skibilia. This record obviously demonstrates Jim Jones and Conway's ability to thoughtfully reflect upon impactful current events like the George Floyd situation. The social commentary they both provide is pretty touching. Both of their verses are really poignant with quotable lines, but I probably enjoy Conway's the most. He really paints a picture of the pain that police brutality has not only caused his own family, but to the black community as a whole. "Police killed my uncle, had my grandma crying hard." The soulful beat would stand out as well. You can just feel the pain in that sample. Right after is Luxury Lies, another record where Jimmy retraces his hustling steps, but this time over a gritty and psychedelic backdrop. Jim speaks on his time in the trenches and also references the stories of people he knew who fell on hard times. There are also some boastful words from Big Body Bess, which was fine, although I'm not sure how it really related to the track, but I did like this moody production as well as Jimmy's flashbacks to his street days. The imagery was pretty vivid. The second to last track, Three Cuts, is one of my favorites. We are getting a recognizable horn sample that is ultra funky. You may remember this from Big Daddy Kane's Smooth Operator, or perhaps from the Eminem song off that Sway and Tech compilation, but this is one dope ass beat that definitely gives off that New York anthem flavor. And Jimmy is showing that Brooklyn love, as this contains some scratched in Jay-Z vocals as well as a hard verse from Mano. Jim states, "I'm from the H where we really get jiggy. I know dudes at Harlem shaking would really kill Shiggy. You see what happened to Big, they put bullets through his truck. Now we rapping to Big in a bulletproof truck." I was getting a very strong pro New York City aesthetic to this track. Both Jim and Mano paint a portrait of that old New York. They capture the raw, gritty, and fly essence of it all. This project closes out with the heartfelt Make It Home. This is one of those songs for the trenches that Jim always manages to put on his albums, and he's been able to do this since the jump, really. But this time around, he explores the theme of black empowerment a little more than usual. On top of some somber keys, Jim talks about black leadership, combating racism, and surviving the streets, because at the end of the day, black people are just trying to make it home safely. Overall, I give this project a rating of 4 out of 5. I think this album shows Jim Jones's continued growth and maturity as a lyricist. His flow and delivery sound more polished and at ease. And let's be real, Jim Jones has come a long way from being viewed as the weakest link in the set to becoming the most consistent member over time. Even though Jewels and Cameron are intrinsically more gifted as MCs, it has been Jim Jones who we can count on to consistently put out quality releases. Not Jimmy, not Cam. Now, they clearly had their time, but since 2018, all eyes have been on Jim Jones. Now, I realize that Jim Jones isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, especially for the people out there who are only focused on artists who have complex lyrics with intricate wordplay. But those folks still gotta admit that Jim Jones has stepped it up. You know, he has improved. If you can't acknowledge that, then I think it's safe to say you're hating. It's just that simple. When talking about the production, Harry Fraud continued to do what he does best, which was to provide smooth, unique, and soulful instrumentals. Now, some might not consider these to be the most mind-blowing Harry Fraud beats of his career, but they damn sure were solid, and he definitely didn't disappoint sonically. I guess we know moving forward that whenever Jimmy wants to give the Heatmakers a break, he can link with Harry Fraud and basically get the same results. I think it's safe to say that we can add this to the win column for both Jimmy and Harry. My favorite tracks include Laps Around the Sun, Fucked Up, Aunt Viola, Barry White, Say a Prayer, the People remix, and 3 Cuts. Let me know what you thought about this project in the comment section below. What should I check out next? It's your boy, Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but be sure to hit that like button and please subscribe. As always, it's peace and blessings. Jim Jones, Harry Fraud, the Fraud Department, 1.